Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next The Rise of Kyoshi chapter analysis video. This one's going to be for chapter 30, which is called Farewells. And yeah, after this one, only 2 more chapters to go, so we're right towards the end of the book here. This chapter specifically is basically a setup for like the end sequence effectively. So it's Kyoshi getting the bandages off her hands, realizing that, oh, I'll need something to protect them, so Lek and Rangi go out with her to get some gloves for her, and then they're attacked in the middle of the streets. They're poisoned, and so that's the setup for how does Kyoshi react to this attack on the streets and what happens from it. It is an incredibly shocking chapter in terms of how sudden and brutal, in a way, one of the decisions that is, I suppose, made by the writer in this end sequence of this chapter, but we'll get to it. So anyway, Kyoshi gets the bandages taken off her hands by Lao Ji, surprisingly, and he basically has a talk to her post-killing Zhu. You look lost in thought when I came in. Are you regretting killing Zhu? No, I feel bad about letting Tay live. It's more like I feel inconsistent, unfair, like I should have either killed them both or let them both live. Lao Ji's response is an interesting one, that, you know, it's kind of thought-provoking. It's pretty... He's actually sort of being sort of guru-like to her in this sequence, now that he sort of accepts that she's not going to be the assassin that he wants, and is more taking on that avatar role. So he does kind of give her some actual wisdom on, I suppose, the idea that she has to be neutral. She is going to have to make these decisions over and over and over again. And if she's not going to take an approach of just basically kill anyone or give mercy to everyone, if she's going to calculate it and justify every single one of them, it's going to be tough. And here's what he says. A general sends some troops to die in a siege and holds others back in reserve. A king taxes half his lands to support the other. A mother has 1 dose of medicine and 2 sick children. I wouldn't call your situation a particularly exalted one. People of all walks, high and low, choose to hurt someone to help others. I can tell you, it'll only get worse the more you embrace your avatarhood. It'll never get easier. If you had a strict rule, maybe, to always show mercy or always punish, you could use it as a shield to protect your spirit. But that would be distancing yourself from your duty. Determining the fates of others on a case-by-case basis, considering the infinite combinations of circumstance, will wear on you like rain on the mountain. Give it enough time and you'll bear the scars. You'll never be truly fair and you will never be truly correct. This is your burden. So this is Lao Ji basically saying you have chosen to take the difficult path here by considering everything and taking it all in, and not just making a decision yourself based on one thing or another, but by taking everything together and making the calculation, like she's done already with the decision to not kill Tay but to kill Zhu. Doing that going forward on every single situation as the avatar that she's going to have to deal with. It's going to be tough. And so because this is also the same guy who is basically teaching her the secrets to live longer, you have this kind of situation with Kyoshi of what makes her want to kind of go on as the avatar for 230 years. She has to specifically choose to do this technique to live longer. Why does she do it for, you know, an extra 130 or so years to live this long, to make these decisions the whole way? That's going to be a very interesting thing, I suppose, heading into the second Kyoshi book, to see if they answer that question of like, someone who uses this technique does have to choose to live as long as possible. It's not just a case of like, boom, they do it and it's by default they live an extra 100 years. They have to keep doing it and constantly, you know, keeping their body tidy for that long. You know, why does she do it given what's been said to her right here? But then Lao Ji switches to, you know, do you feel strong enough to take your man now? Kyoshi's response is like, what? What are you talking about? She almost forgets for just a second. After everything that's just happened, she's forgotten almost the utter revenge anger towards John Zhu. Some seek vengeance you are, your quest, your ultimate goal. You defeated the same enemy John Zhu did. Do you feel strong enough to take him down now? And Kyoshi thinks about it and that, yes, John Zhu defeated Zhu Ping-an, that's why he was in prison in the first place. She's defeated him now. That is an oversimplification, but that that's a signifier that she is on that level, and she figures that out basically at this point in time. She doesn't give an answer, but her consideration is like, yes, she's ready to go on this. But Liu basically leaves. He says, I have something business to take care of on my own. Kyoshi just warns him, don't kill Tae. Not after I went through the trouble. I mean it. So, next scene is Kyoshi walking in, and she finds Rangi and Lek playing Pai's show. And basically the idea here is that Lek, now that Kyoshi's back up, Lek is like, Rangi, did you know about the whole firebender lightning thing? I've never met a firebender other than you. Is that some kind of dirty trick you people pull to win Agni Kois or whatever? No. Bending lightning is a skill so rare that there are barely any living witnesses who can confirm it exists. And the reports don't mention Zu was from the Fire Nation at all. Do you think I'd let Kyoshi walk into a fight without telling her everything I knew about her opponent? Kyoshi just makes a note here about, like, she's just watching the two of them argue about this technique, but she notes that she hadn't noticed his eye color, but then not every firebender had a blatantly gold irises. So, just noting that just because Mach and this guy were brothers doesn't mean they were blood brothers. They could have just been like Lek and Chen, just been, having sworn to each other. So just this Dao Fei thing being involved with all aspects here. But anyway, Rangi notices Kyoshi's hands, that even though they've been healed, they're still, they describe her hands as just like being clearly like, they've been burned in the past. Like some of her fingerprints are described as sort of being gone. Her skin was very, very smooth. Now it's not anymore. So Lek decides that, I have an idea for that. Let's go shopping. He says, come on, lovebirds, let's go shopping. So anyway, this next section is basically just they're walking through the town, and we get the sort of reaction to everyone to seeing Kyoshi. Clearly she is the one who did this. People like, just looking very afraid of her in the town. And Lek just kind of points out that, well, for starters, a lot of Zygons saw flashes of lightning and a pillar of wind and fire from your duel with Zu. And then some of the Dao Fei passed through the town as they fled, telling stories of a giant with eyes of blood who drank the soul of their leader. These idiots haven't necessarily put together that you're the Avatar. I heard one shopkeeper say you were a dragon in human form, which explained why you could fly and breathe fire. But Kyoshi's just kind of like, I saved them from the Yellownecks, but Lek is just like, Kyoshi, by strict interpretation of the code, you are now the leader of the Yellownecks. Dr. Song, who healed you, we had to beg her to get you to get her to heal you. She just saw a Dao Fei girl who challenged her elder brother for control of their gang and won. And he's just like, you're dangerous. You sort of have a reputation now. And Kyoshi's just like, my one selfless act being the Avatar, making that decision, is sort of tainted now in a way. Everyone just thinks she's this, brutal character that just will take people out and has this very grandiose backstory in a way, presented the better already. So yeah, the context had already crumbled away, leaving her no better than Tagaka, the pirate queen. So that's interesting. And they go into a shop. It's the leather worker / tanner, and they're going to get Kyoshi some gloves. That's the whole point here. The shopkeeper seems to be one of the only people in the entire village who seems to be aware that what happened was basically that Kyoshi is the Avatar and she took out, a bandit leader. He seems to be the only one who's sort of on the ball that happened. So he is trying to help them here, and the whole situation you get into here is that none of the gloves that he has on display are big enough for her hands, and he takes a special pair out from the back. It says here, made these for a colonel on the rise in the army a long time ago. Poor fellow died before he could pick them up. The gloves were more like gauntlets, the thick, subtle leather fastened to gleaming metal bracers that protected the wrists. Kyoshi pulled them on and buckled the straps. The fingers were snug, a second skin, and the armored portions heavy and reassuring. So, there was no way these gloves would be acceptable in polite company. Their very appearance was aggressive, a declaration of war. They're perfect, and she's given them for free. So, this is pretty much the very last section of Kyoshi's, outfit, I suppose, in a way, finished. That this is all of the important pieces of this look now fully finished. she knows actually in the next chapter that if only it were this easy to find shoes that fit, almost suggesting that like her giant kind of boots that we get a focus on in Avatar Day 205 of ATLA, that she maybe hasn't found those yet, but in general the core pieces of her outfit have all been completed now at this point. So here comes the shocking scene. Everyone's getting on very well. Kyoshi has her new kind of gauntlet gloves, and Lek just kind of notes that it's better than being short and skinny. If I was your size, I'd be ruling my own nation by now. Rangi kind of teases him and says, "Oh, cheer up, Lek. You'll fill out soon. You have good bone structure." And he gets teased. He gets a little bit embarrassed here, like sort of being complimented about like what he'll grow into in a way. And then this is where it else begins to happen. Rangi had suddenly yanked him downward by the arm. Her knees dragged in the dirt. It was as if her entire body had gone limp. Lek yelped again and swatted at the small of his back. As he spun in place, Kyoshi saw a tuft of down sticking out of him, the fletchling of a dart. So they all get hit with these darts, which are later revealed to be Shirshu spit darts, so that's why they sort of immediately sort of collapse, their body paralyzed, but they're still like awake. And the real tragedy of this is this situation here. Rangi seemed barely conscious, and Lek began to gag and choke. Feet ran over to them, pairs of hands quickly grabbed Rangi and dragged her away. Just Rangi. Kyoshi tried to shout and scream, but the poison had its strongest grip on her neck, where it had first entered her body. Her lungs forced air out, but her voice box added no sound. She could see Lek, his face turned red and puffy. He clutched at his swelling throat. He was having some kind of a reaction. He couldn't breathe. Tears streamed down Kyoshi's face as she lay inches away, helpless, unable to save another boy from Jianzu's venoms. The dust turned muddy under her eyes. It was nearly half an hour before she could crawl over to Lek and check for a heartbeat that wasn't there. So this was one of the most shocking moments in the entire book when I got to it, because the chapter after you have this great, like, Lek and Kyoshi finally getting on, it really feels like kind of actual brother and sister, because they now sort of have the connection over Kyoshi's parents. And finally, Lek is calling Kyoshi sister in the Dao Fei way. So it feels like, great, we got his backstory. We're finally on track now. We can really see what their interactions are like. Then the very next chapter, boom, reaction to the Shirshu venom, and the effect that it has is that like his throat clearly closes over, and he's just killed here as a I suppose the idea is like this was just a kind of like random thing that happened, that the intent, I suppose, from Jianzu wasn't to really kill any of them. This was just this kind of inadvertent side effect, but the result is still that Jianzu has resulted in Lek's death. And if you want to really go all the way back, the only reason Jianzu sort of knows in what area Kyoshi's in is because Kyoshi spared Tei, who sent the letter to Jianzu, which alerted him to the position. So this is sort of meant to be, in a way, the consequences of Kyoshi saving Lek, not realizing that Lek could be part of Jianzu's network, which he was, but inadvertently this has resulted in Lek's death. So, final scene of the chapter. She arrived at their building at the same time as Lao Ji, Wang, and Kirima. They saw Lek's body in her arms and reeled like they'd been struck. Wang crumpled to the ground and began to sob, his low moans shaking the earth. Lao Ji closed his eyes and whispered a blessing over and over without stopping. Kirima was as pale as the moon. She held something out to Kyoshi, her hand trembling uncontrollably. This was stuck on the post in the town square, she said, her voice raw and bleeding. It was a note. Avatar, come find me in Qinchao village alone. Pinned to the paper it was written on was a silky black top knot of hair, crudely severed from its owner's head. So here we go. Here is the setup for the confrontation between Kyoshi and Jianzu. Lek has been killed. Rangi kidnapped. Kyoshi poisoned, but purposefully, not taken as such in the middle of all of this. And very, very interesting here. The meeting is going to take place in Qinchao village, which as far as I can tell from the next chapter, is basically just Chin Village, especially with the way it's described, and the only way it would make sense, given that Jianzhu has also just recovered from poison. Why would he choose somewhere that is so far away to have the meeting compared to effectively the nearest town to Yokoya, which is the place that is on the other side of the peninsula, which is Chin Village, as we know. So that's what it is, that's what's happening. And then, yeah, the significance of the top knot to prove that he has Rangi. It's just a thing that shows it, but it's also all the more kind of brutal because we know the significance of the top knot to firebenders, and to forcibly sever it like that is just not on. So double reasons going into this for Kyoshi to be angry and furious at Jianzhu, just as she had sort of almost like forgotten. It was not the centerpiece of her mind going after Jianzhu, as the start of this chapter pointed out. Now suddenly right back on track. As she says here, Jianzhu's poison's taking someone else away from her, just like Yun. Now also he's taunting her with Rangi, and the fact that Jianzhu has just poisoned Heiran, and we haven't at this stage in the book found out what's up with Heiran. Now he's hurt Heiran's daughter in all of this. So Jianzhu had lost it at this point. Just the lengths that he's going through in all of this to make this happen. The body count that is piling up, all to just get the Avatar back on track, and he feels he's the only one to guide the Avatar in the right direction. But yeah, it's going to lead to this very, very interesting confrontation between these two that happens in the next chapter. Because the next chapter is more or less the sort of present day ending of the book. The last chapter of the book is sort of like an epilogue type thing. It takes place a little bit after the ending, not too far afterwards, but next chapter is like the one. It is the events that are the end of this book, basically. So yeah, I'll cover both of the remaining two chapters in videos tomorrow, and we'll finish up the chapter analysis stuff, and then we'll get into some kind of final thoughts in another video as well. But yeah, that's my thoughts on this chapter, Farewells. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.